Welcome back to the deep dive. Now, usually we're wading into the weeds on, tech trends, productivity hacks, maybe a biography.
Hmm.
Today is, well, it's something very different. We are wading into what I can only really describe as a political minefield.
Minefield is putting it lightly. We've got a piece of source material in front of us that is essentially a scorched earth critique of
Yeah.
the current state of the United Kingdom.
Right.
It's looking at the tension between national identity, public infrastructure, immigration, and it is not holding back.
It's visceral. I mean, the text argues that the UK is in a state of tangible decline, and it points the finger directly at high levels of non-EU immigration.
Hmm.
And we should be really clear for everyone listening, this isn't some dry government report. This is a hard-hitting argument that actually names specific demographics, mostly from South Asia, Eastern Europe, and alleges they're having a catastrophic effect.
Right, and our mission today is what it always is. We're the guides here, not the judges. We're not here to endorse any of this.
Okay.
And we're not here to sanitize it either. We're just here to unpack the argument the author's making, to understand the logic, however, controversial it is.
Exactly. So, big disclaimer up front. We are reporting on the source material. When we say the text claims or the author argues, we're exploring their perspective.
It's a deep dive into their worldview.
So let's get into it, the machinery of the argument. It doesn't start with culture. It starts with hard numbers, a massive allegation about the visa system.
It opens with a very specific mechanism, the student visa. The author argues that this has become the main loophole for non-EU migration, citing a backdoor, as they call it, used by students from India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh.
And there's a headline figure.
There is. The claim is that nearly 20,000 students from these regions claimed asylum after their student visas expired.
Wait, 20,000?
20,000.
That's not a rounding error. That's the population of a small market town. What's the deeper implication here, according to the text?
It's how they focus on. The argument is that this is basically a bait and switch.
A bait and switch.
Yeah. You enter the country on a Tier 4 visa, which implies you have funds, you're here to learn, you're temporary. But the intent, according to the text, was always to pivot to asylum. They call it a calculated exploitation.
So it challenges that whole narrative that international students are just a pure, revenue stream for university.
It completely challenges it. It says, look at the long-term cost if they never leave and just enter the asylum backlog instead.
So it frames the system as being naive. We think we're selling education, but the text argues we're actually just selling entry. And that leads directly to the next point, the infrastructure overload argument. This is the why you can't get a GP appointment section.
Precisely. The author treats infrastructure like it's a simple supply and demand equation. The UK has a finite amount of public goods, NHS slots, housing, road space, the welfare budget. And the text argues that we've introduced this massive, unplanned demand shock through immigration. It even uses the word scamming pretty liberally here.
Suggesting that some groups are actively draining resources they haven't contributed to. It's a classic zero-sum game argument.
It is. If X is using the resource, Y cannot.
But the usual counter-argument to that is the talent narrative, right? We need these immigrants to staff our hospitals. But this source, it really goes after that idea.
Oh, it tries to completely demolish the global talent myth. And it does it in a very specific way. It attacks the credibility of the qualifications themselves.
Or so.
It claims that corruption in India, for example, is so systemic that buying a degree, a certificate from a top university, is trivial.
That is a massive accusation. It's basically saying to the government, you think you're importing an engineer, but you're actually importing a piece of paper.
That's the claim,
Right.
that the British state is naive. We look at a certificate and assume it means skill, but the author suggests it might just mean bribery.
And there's a flip side to this argument.
There is, and it's even bleaker. The text argues that the actual global talent, the real high flyers, are looking at the UK and just saying, no thanks.
Let me guess. The weather, high taxes.
All of the above, plus the cost of living.
Hey.
The argument is the UK has become this low-opportunity, high-cost environment. So if you're a genius from Silicon Valley or Bangalore, you go to Dubai or Singapore.
Not London.
You don't come here. So the author suggests the UK is left with the people who need our welfare state, not the people the UK needs for innovation.
So the economic argument is we aren't getting the best, and the ones we are getting are gaming the system.
Yeah, that's the argument in a nutshell.
But then the text shifts gears completely. It moves from, macroeconomics to the micro experience. It drops us right into the middle of a London commute. And this section was incredibly descriptive.
It's very sensory. Very. The author moves away from stats and starts talking about the lived experience of the public sphere.
Mm.
And it describes the daily commute as a site of intense cultural friction. It singles out Indian commuters specifically, alleging a kind of sonic takeover of public transport.
This is the speakerphone issue, isn't it? I think everyone's had that moment where you just want quiet, and suddenly the train carriage is a conference call.
That's a huge part of it. Speaking loudly on phones, playing music on loudspeakers, watching videos without headphones. But it's also physical pushing, shoving, no queuing.
Mm.
And pretty controversially, the text focuses heavily on smell. It explicitly mentions overwhelming smells and people eating pungent food in confined spaces.
It feels like the author is trying to articulate a violation of unwritten social rules.
That's exactly it. Every society has this sort of social contract for how you behave in a shared metal tube underground, right?
Right.
And the author argues that contract has been torn up. They use the phrase unhealthy toxic experiences. And this isn't just about being annoyed. The text escalates this to a safety issue.
It mentions that women and disabled people are actually retreating from public spaces. That's a very serious claim.
It's a huge claim that many girls are now afraid to go outside, and disabled individuals avoid public transport because the environment has become aggressive and unpredictable. The author connects this directly to these specific demographics.
So the quality of life in Britain is crashing because the public etiquette that makes a dense city livable is just vanishing.
That's the argument.
Yeah.
And they don't think it's just accidental bad manners. They argue this is an importation of a different social structure entirely. Which brings us to the caste system.
Right. This is where the text gets sociological.
Yeah, for anyone who isn't familiar, the caste system is a very rigid, hereditary social hierarchy from India. And the author argues you can't just leave that at the border. The text claims higher levels of Indian migration are importing caste-based discrimination into the UK.
So the fear is we're importing a foreign class system that conflicts with British values of equality, that you can be treated differently by your boss here in the UK based on a hierarchy from thousands of miles away.
Correct. But then the text goes into even darker territory.
Yeah.
It makes a very serious allegation about gender. The author claims there is a deep-seated hatred of girls within some of these communities.
This was the part citing abortion statistics. This is probably the heaviest section of the text.
Yes. The text points to reports alleging that Indian women are involved in disproportionately high levels of abortion when the fetus is known to be female.
Sex-selective abortion.
Right. And the author frames this as warning to the world. The argument is basically, if this is how they treat their own daughters, what does that mean for their integration into a society that values gender equality?
It's a heavy, heavy charge. It paints a picture of a fundamental clash of civilizations. And the text doesn't just lump all immigrants together, does it? It breaks down complaints for different nationalities. We've talked about Indian demographics, but there's a whole separate section on Pakistani communities.
There is. And the focus shifts a bit. With the Pakistani demographic, the text zooms in on two things, law and biology. Legally, it claims there's a track record of noncompliance, citing deportation numbers from the U.S. and Saudi Arabia to suggest these groups are viewed as problematic globally. But the biological claim is the one that links back to the economy.
The cousin marriage issue, this topic comes up a lot in these debates. How does the author frame it?
So the text discusses the practice of consanguineous marriage, marrying first cousins. The author claims this is producing a statistically higher number of children with genetic disabilities.
And there's the economic link.
There it is. The author argues this practice is placing a disproportionate, massive burden on the NHS and the welfare state.
So the argument is, a cultural practice is creating a biological cost that the taxpayer has to cover.
Exactly. It's framed as a preventable drain on the state. The text also alleges internal conflict, that these groups bring home country politics to UK streets, and explicitly links Pakistani groups to drug-related crime.
It's like they're trying to catalog every possible point of friction. Then there's the pivot to Eastern Europe. Romanians are singled out. Is the complaint the same?
It's slightly different. With the South Asian groups, the complaints are often about cultural dominance or structural exploitation. With the Romanian demographic, the text alleges a mix of low skills and high criminality.
High criminality.
High involvement in the drug trade and human trafficking. The author actually compares this European group to refugees from Afghanistan or Pakistan in terms of their net negative impact.
So it's a complete rejection of the idea that European migration is somehow easier to integrate.
Totally. It feels like the author is building this unified theory of decline, connecting the dots between a fake degree, a loud commute, a genetic defect, and a crime wave, and saying it's all the same problem.
And that's the core deep dive insight here, isn't it? The author doesn't see these as separate policy failures.
Not at all. They view it as a systemic collapse caused by losing control of the borders. They argue that the NHS waiting list and the feeling of unease on the bus are the same phenomenon. It's the idea that the carrying capacity of the nation, both physically and culturally, has been breached.
Okay, so we've stared into the abyss here. We've seen the problem, as the author defines it: crumbling infrastructure, culture under siege, a gamed visa system. What's the solution? What does this text demand the government actually do?
The solution is a hard pivot to nationalism, a call for autarky, self-sufficiency. The author demands that the government stop trying to be a global humanitarian superpower and start prioritizing the home team.
Prioritize the home team. What does that look like in practice? It's a great slogan, but what are the mechanics?
It means empathy and generosity should be exclusive to UK citizens. If the welfare state is a lifeboat, you stop letting people on. But there's a demand on the British people, too. The text says, if we close the door, you need to step up.
Interesting.
It calls for locals to skill up, work harder, and, this is crucial, have more children.
So it flips the usual script. Instead of, we need immigrants because our birth rate is falling, it's, no, fix the birth rate.
Exactly. A call for demographic self-reliance. Don't import labor, make it. But beyond economics, there's a huge cultural demand. The author insists the government must explicitly define British culture.
Define it. That sounds incredibly complicated. Culture is something that just happens, right? It's organic.
Extremely complicated. But the author's view is that because British culture has been left so vague and undefined, it's being easily replaced. They want the government to draw a hard line in the sand.
A codification of values.
Yes. A list of behaviors and expectations that says, this is who we are, and if you want to be here, you adhere to this.
And the end goal of all this is a restoration of quality of life.
Yes. The text is deeply nostalgic. It wants to return to a time where public services worked, public transport was orderly, social trust was high, and the author believes the only way to get that back is to radically exclude the populations they see as responsible for the decline.
It's a lot to process. We've gone from visa loopholes to genetic arguments to a call for a national rebirth. Why does this matter to the listener? Why should you care about this specific text?
Well, whether you agree with the author or find these arguments abhorrent, this text is a roadmap to a rising sentiment. When you hear phrases like broken Britain or mass migration, this text provides the raw, unfiltered logic underneath those headlines.
It helps explain why a significant portion of the electorate feels the social contract is broken.
Exactly. It connects the dots between things that might seem unrelated, like student visas and street safety, into a coherent, if controversial, narrative.
It really challenges you to think about what a nation actually is. Is it just an economic zone, or is it a shared cultural project?
And if it is a shared project, who sets the rules? Is it the people who've been there for generations? Or is it an evolving standard based on who arrives next? The text takes a very firm stance on that.
Which leads us to our final thought. The author places a huge amount of weight on the government defining British culture. It sounds strong on paper.
It does. But here's the provocation for you to take away with you. In 2026, in a hyper-globalized world where our movies, our food, our tech, our economy are completely intertwined with the rest of the planet, is it even possible for a government to define a singular national culture? And even if they did, if they wrote it down on paper tomorrow, would that actually fix the potholes in the road or shorten the queue at A&E?
Is culture the magic wand, or is it a distraction from the nuts and bolts of running a country? That's for you to decide.
A heavy one today, but necessary.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. See you next time.